Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into something, well, pretty remarkable that happened recently.
You mean that direct face-off between Israel and Iran?
Exactly. I mean, it's unique, right? They don't even share a border. And the scale of it. Iran launching over 2,000 projectiles.
Yeah, hundreds of ballistic missiles, loads of suicide drones. It was a massive attack.
Yet the defense performance was almost unbelievable.
And that's really the core question we're digging into today. How did Israel manage, what was it, an 86% missile intercept rate and almost 99% for drones?
99%. Incredible.
Right. And crucially, it wasn't just Israel acting alone or, solely relying on the U.S. and some allies. This was down to a really complex, multi-layered air defense network.
The Middle East Air Defense Alliance?
That's the one. Some analysts are even kind of calling it a Hebrew-Arab NATO. That's our mission today. Unpack how this actually works.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we'll get into the tech, the history behind this integrated network, what it means for security there, and, the future balance of power. We'll sift through sources, pull out the key insights for you. Let's get into it.
What's really fascinating here is just how big a shift this represents. We're talking about countries that, not that long ago, were literally vowing to fight Israel.
And now they're strategic partners.
Strategic partners. It really started gaining momentum with the Abraham Accords back in 2020. And then those Saudi-Israel normalization talks in 2023 really pushed things further.
To the point of sharing sensitive defense data.
Exactly. Even the most sensitive data. It shows how shared threats can sometimes overcome decades of, well, really deep-seated hostility.
So where did the real spark for this collaboration come from? Was there a single event?
A lot of our sources point to one key moment, that 2019 attack on the Saudi Aramco oil facility.
Oh, right. That was huge.
It was a massive wake-up call. It just brutally exposed how vulnerable critical infrastructure was across the region. And it made the need for some kind of joint air defense shield really urgent, really undeniable. It's sort of an, oh, okay, we need to do this together moment.
So that was the trigger. How did it evolve from there? What were the milestones?
Well, if you trace the timeline, the sort of official starting point many point to was a secret meeting. Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, March 2022.
Secret meeting. Who was there?
Top military brass, senior commanders from Israel and 6 Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, and Bahrain, all in one room discussing shared threats. That was a big deal.
Definitely.
And behind the scenes, something else important had already happened. In September 2021, right after the Abraham Accords, the U.S. moved Israel's military coordination from EUCOM over to CENTCOM.
Okay, so putting them under the same U.S. military command umbrella as the Arab states.
Exactly. That just smoothed the path enormously for direct military-to-military cooperation. Then things started getting practical. January 2022, you had the first joint exercise, the IMX 2022 naval drill, 10 regional countries involved.
So practicing together.
And then in summer 2023, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited the region. That led to more agreements, specifically on technical cooperation, sharing radar data, and that was happening right alongside those Saudi-Israel normalization talks. Things were really picking up pace.
But hang on, given the public feeling in many Arab countries, especially once the Gaza war started, didn't everyone expect this cooperation to just, well, grind to a halt?
That's the really interesting part. You're right. Many analysts predicted exactly that. Public pressure, protests. It seemed logical these collaborations would stop.
But they didn't.
No. Against expectations, the sources we've looked at suggest that shared threats, especially the worry about the conflict escalating across the region, actually sped up the cooperation.
Wow. So the common danger outweighed the internal politics.
It seems so in this case. The fear of wider conflict, particularly involving Iran or its proxies, became a stronger unifying force.
Okay, so this alliance is real, it's operating. How does it actually work? What's the command center for this whole thing?
The nerve center is the Joint Air Operations Center, the JOC. It's at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, operating under U.S. CENTCOM.
Under the U.S. umbrella again.
Yes. And its main job is crucial. It takes all the incoming radar feeds, all the air defense data from the different member countries, and fuses it. Creates a single, unified air picture for everyone.
A common view of the sky.
Precisely. So everyone's seeing the same threats at the same time.
And to build that picture, you need eyes in the sky, right? Beyond ground radar.
Absolutely. That's where airborne early warning and control aircraft come in.
Right.
Things like the big Boeing AWACS planes or the U.S. Navy's Hawkeye aircraft.
Those have powerful radars.
Extremely powerful. They can see out over 500 kilometers. They fly high, loiter for long periods, and crucially, they can spot low-flying targets like cruise missiles or drones much earlier than ground radar sometimes can. They're like mobile command posts up there.
Got it. So, on the ground, how do Israel's own famous systems, Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow, fit into this bigger picture? Are they connected?
They are now.
Yeah.
That's a key part of this integration. Israel systems, Arrow for the long-range ballistic stuff, David Sling for medium range, Iron Dome for the shorter range rockets and drones, which used to be purely for defending Israel's territory,
Right.
are now networked with systems in other countries, primarily the Patriot systems. It's the workhorse medium-range interceptor that you find in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain.
And didn't the UAE have another system involved, the AID?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. The paid system in the UAE, that's for high-altitude ballistic missile defense. And it actually scored its first real-world intercept back in 2022.
Against missiles from Yemen.
Houthi ballistic missiles. And that was seen as a really important proof of concept. It showed that this kind of regional cooperation, sharing data, using different systems together, could actually work in practice.
Okay, let's talk specifics. Who are the key players, the key contributors here? Where are the critical nodes?
Well, Jordan is absolutely critical. Geographically, it's a bridge between Israel and the Gulf. And it hosts some very advanced U.S.-supplied radars that give incredible coverage from the eastern Mediterranean, basically all the way to western Iran.
So vital early warning.
Vital early warning. Then you have Bahrain. It hosts the U.S. Fifth Fleet, so you've got powerful naval radars monitoring the Persian Gulf constantly. Plus, Bahrain has an integrated air and missile defense training center. They're really invested.
Okay. And Saudi Arabia, they've faced threats from Yemen for years.
Exactly. The Saudis have a lot of operational experience dealing with missile and drone attacks from the Houthis. They built up an extensive network of Patriot systems, advanced radars, and all of that is now plugged into the JAOC and networked with the other regional systems.
So pooling all that experience and tech, what's the main advantage you get from knitting it all together like this, especially against things like drones?
Speed. It's all about the speed advantage. Early detection and then rapid information sharing. That's absolutely critical for those slower, lower-flying drone threats that can sometimes evade traditional radar until they're much closer.
Right, the sneaky ones.
Giving everyone those extra minutes or even seconds to track, identify, and decide how to engage makes a huge difference.
Okay, so the system sounds good theoretically, but it's actually been tested in combat, right? Before the big Iran attack.
Yes, it faced some serious tests before that. In the summer of 2023, that UAE THAAD system we mentioned intercepted multiple ballistic missiles, and the intel support for that came directly from the JOC.
Okay, so that was one.
Then, just a couple of months later, July 2023, the network detected 3 Hezbollah drones heading for the Karish gas field out in the Mediterranean.
Ah, maritime target.
Right. And because of the early warning from the network, an Israeli F-16 fighter jet and 2 Barak 8 missiles.
Barak 8, what's that?
That's an advanced surface-to-air missile. They were fired from an Israeli SAR-5 corvette. That's one of their warships. They took out the drones before they got anywhere near the gas field.
Yeah.
Another win for shared intelligence.
And then came the big one. April 2024, Iran's Operation True Promise. That massive barrage we started with. How did the alliance hold up then?
That was the ultimate test, no question. Hundreds of missiles and drones heading for Israel. And the alliance achieved, well, the numbers are staggering, over 99% interception rate overall before they reached Israeli airspace or targets.
How? How did that coordination actually work in the heat of the moment?
It was complex, but essentially radars in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they picked up the launches and the incoming tracks very early.
Okay.
They transmitted that data live, encrypted using Link 16.
Link 16, that's like a standard military data link.
Exactly, a secure NATO standard. Sent it straight to the Joint Command Center, the JOC. So they had real-time awareness across the board, allowing for a layered, coordinated defense involving assets from multiple countries, including U.S. and other allied forces in the region, too.
That sounds incredibly expensive and complex to set up and maintain. What's the investment been like?
Oh, it's significant. The U.S. has poured over $1.2 billion just into the communication infrastructure to make this data sharing possible.
Wow.
And it's not just money. The Pentagon has technical teams on the ground, embedded in the member countries, doing maintenance, ensuring all the different systems can actually talk to each other.
So constant upkeep.
Constant. And CENTCOM's goal, they say, is eventually an automated early warning system, faster identification, faster threat assessment. Plus, they're constantly training Joint exercises like United Shield 2024 specifically simulate complex saturation attacks, overwhelming the defenses to make sure everyone's ready.
We've talked air and ground. What about the sea? You mentioned the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. How does the naval layer fit in?
That's another crucial layer. Those U.S. Navy Aegis-equipped warships, like the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, have incredibly powerful radars built for air and missile defense. They can track hundreds of targets at once.
So more eyes, more interceptors.
Exactly. During that big Iranian attack, those U.S. destroyers, along with Israeli SAR-6 corvettes, the newer Israeli warships were out there in the Med and the Persian Gulf. They used their missiles SM, standard missiles from the U.S. ships, Barak 8s from the Israeli ships, to knock down cruise missiles and drones before they even got close to land. It really showed the power of naval missile defense as part of this integrated shield.
It sounds like there's a lot of technical sharing happening too, not just connecting systems, but actually improving them together.
Yes, and that points to a deeper level of cooperation, maybe even growing trust. You have Israeli experts reportedly helping upgrade Saudi Patriot systems.
Really? Israelis working on Saudi systems?
That's what the sources suggest. And the UAE, having used el-Sheikh in combat, is sharing its operational lessons, its experience, with others. Plus, that Joint Command Center in Qatar isn't just for operations. It has an advanced simulation center for joint training.
Standardizing procedures across different militaries.
Precisely. Making sure everyone operates off the same playbook when a threat appears. It's about building that interoperability muscle memory.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly effective, a real game changer. But, no system is perfect. This deep dive needs to look at the challenges, too. What are the vulnerabilities, the hurdles this cooperation faces?
You're absolutely right. And the biggest one, the sort of elephant in the room, according to our sources, is still the Palestinian issue.
The politics.
The politics and the public sentiment. The Gaza war really threw that into sharp relief. You saw huge protests in places like Jordan, even Egypt, against any cooperation with Israel. It highlights a major disconnect between what the governments might see as strategically necessary and what their populations feel. That puts enormous pressure on these partnerships.
And even between the governments, there must be lingering distrust, right? Concerns about sovereignty, sharing sensitive military secrets.
Absolutely. That's another huge challenge. National sovereignty is paramount. Arab countries are very cautious about having, say, Israeli forces or even permanent Israeli equipment on their soil.
Yeah.
And there's always the worry about intelligence leaks.
Leaks to who? Iran?
To adversaries, yes, Iran being the main concern for many, especially for countries trying to maintain, complex diplomatic ties across the region. Sharing sensitive radar data is a big step.
And here's something that seems counterintuitive, this dual-use dilemma. What's that about? It's not just about leaks out, is it?
No, that's a really insightful point from the sources. The dual-use dilemma gets at the core trust issue. It's the worry among some Arab partners that Israel could potentially use the shared radar data, not just against common enemies, but also to monitor their own internal military activities.
Spying on your allies with the tools you share.
Or at least gathering strategic intelligence about their neighbors' infrastructure, capabilities, things they might not want Israel to know in detail. It means that even with the alliance, there might be, let's say, a certain caution in how much data gets shared and under what conditions. It puts a natural brake on full transparency.
Right. And then there are just the existing tensions within the region unrelated to Israel. Do those get in the way?
Definitely. You can't ignore the internal frictions. Old rivalries, border disputes, competition for regional leadership, historical baggage. Think about Qatar's sometimes difficult relations with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, for example. These underlying tensions can absolutely complicate military cooperation, even when facing a common threat.
Okay, one last big one. The U.S. role. It seems central to all this. Is that reliance a weakness?
It's certainly a potential vulnerability, a potential Achilles heel, as some put it. This whole network leans heavily on U.S. technology, U.S. logistical support, U.S. coordination through CENTCOM.
And U.S. policy can change.
As we saw dramatically in Afghanistan. A major shift in Washington's priorities, its willingness to stay engaged, or the conditions of its support, that could profoundly impact the entire structure and effectiveness of this alliance. Countries in the region are very aware of that dependency.
So, pulling it all together, this alliance is clearly real, it's working, it's moved way beyond just concept papers. But where does it go from here?
Well, there's speculation, of course. Some analysts, like Orrin Cardinal, you mentioned from Brookings, see a potential evolution towards something more formal, maybe like a regional NATO.
A treaty alliance?
Potentially. Or at least deeper integration, maybe an integrated naval defense network to protect shipping lanes, for instance. There are apparently discussions happening about more shared infrastructure, new radar bases, maybe in Oman for better coverage, more command centers in places like Kuwait or Bahrain.
So deepening and widening the network, but as always in the Middle East, things are unpredictable. What could throw a wrench in the works?
Oh, many things. The whole situation is incredibly volatile. The future of those Iran-Saudi normalization talks is a big question mark. How the Gaza conflict ultimately resolves or doesn't resolve. And of course, U.S. politics, a potential change in administration, maybe a return of Donald Trump, could bring very different policies towards the region and this alliance. It's a delicate structure in a turbulent environment.
So, wrapping up, what does this really mean for you for understanding the region? It's clear the Middle East is going through some fundamental changes in how security works.
Absolutely. Old lines are blurring, new partnerships are forming, driven by shared threats.
And it's reshaping the balance of power, which will inevitably affect politics, economics, everything across the region for years, maybe decades.
No doubt about it.
So here's the final thought to leave you with. This new alliance, this integrated shield, it's undeniably changing the strategic map of the Middle East. But the big question remains, will these changes ultimately succeed in containing threats like Iran and fostering genuine stability? Or could they inadvertently become a new source of friction, a catalyst for even greater tensions down the road? Something to ponder as we all keep watching this complex region unfold.